Welcome back to Business Week here on Arise News. If there's one company that knows what it means to be in the spotlight due to its role in Nigeria's oil and gas and energy industry, it is London and Joburg-listed Oando plc. Just this week, Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Senator Ainojie Lokobiri, called Oando's successful acquisition of Italian oil giant Eni's onshore assets a turning point for the Niger oil and gas industry's future. Earlier in July, the Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, announced that Oando had completed the acquisition of 100% of the shares of Eni in its subsidiary. That process began in 2023 when Oando announced its plans, but the deal had faced delays due to regulatory approvals required, and the recent announcement of the acquisition completion has also attracted some scrutiny from some quarters. Nevertheless, the Minister of State says the acquisition could help boost Nigeria's production towards the 2 million barrel a day mark. While the NUPRC also said that local operators currently have 30% of crude oil and 60% of gas production in Nigeria, as well as 40% and 32% of oil and gas reserves, respectively. How well are these operators doing? What opportunities can they harness in a time when energy demand is at an all-time high? And how are they innovating to meet this demand? I'm joined today by Dr. Ainojie Alex Irune, Alex, as we fondly call him, the Executive Director of Oando plc, Managing Director of Oando Energy Resources Limited, and President of Oando Clean Energy. Welcome to the show. Like, your entire job title is like a mouthful, 3 in 1. That's great. Great to have you on the show this morning, Alex.
Thank you very much, Rolake. It's always a pleasure.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, indeed. And of course, the first question I want to start with, you know, the company has been in the news a lot lately, and the major highlight is really around the acquisition of these onshore assets. The first question that I want to ask you is really around some of the initial controversies that came out, specifically former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and also 2023 PDP presidential candidates said that questions should be asked about why the regulatory process for Oando's acquisition of these assets didn't take as long as some of the other deals in the market. Namely, there's a Shell Renaissance deal, the Seplat deal. What would be your response to that?
I think, look, the first thing I'd like to do is congratulate myself and the team and the company for the work we've done over the past decade. Mm-hmm. If you recall, Rolake, we acquired ConocoPhillips in 2014.
Yes.
We took a strategic decision 2 years before that to divest from our Naira earning businesses and focus on our dollar-denominated businesses, which effectively were the upstream and the offshore trading businesses. Leaving our marketing business, Wando Marketing, as you know, the filling stations, you know, that do the supply of petrol, and our gas business, now currently Accela, were divested in that process. But this was a deliberate effort to grow our upstream barrels, increase our production, our reserves that we hold, and that first step in the acquisition was to get into a sizable asset being operated by an IOC, get ourselves close to the learnings, understand how this is done with a view to one day operating. Okay. And all you've seen happen now, today, is that journey come to fruition, right? So when we speak about the Eni deal, for us, it's been a deal in the making for 10 years. We set up our company to effectively shadow the operator. And created exactly the same number of departments and personnel, which was at a cost to us, to understand exactly how to operate assets. And now we have crossed the line in this deal. I do want to congratulate not just the board of Oando, but leader and able GCEO, Wale Tinubu, founders, Mofe Boyo as well, and the staff of the company for doing such a remarkable job. You spoke about regulatory approval.
Yes,
and,
which is the big, big topic that's making headlines, yeah.
Now, I think there are two things to understand with regulatory approval is, one, the law guides what happens. Okay. And two, the construct of delays or no delays is something that is subjective in most people's views. And I'll explain what I mean by that. The law is clear on how regulatory approval should go. Section 95, subsection 1 of the PIA states who the obligation or who is obligated to seek that approval.
And who is obligated to seek that approval?
The assignor,
okay.
the license holder, in this case, ENI.
Yeah.
So Wando never applied for consent. ENI did. Now, as part of our sales and purchase agreement, they must inform us when they do that. So we knew when they applied. And this was done in 2023. Now, the broad construct of this delays were partly because we were dealing with a PIA that was being flexed for the first time through a transaction. Right?
Okay.
We saw the regulator go back and forth through a very rigorous process. For the first time, we saw the regulator introduce a divestment framework, which has never been done in the country before. We saw the regulator take us through several steps to ensure that the divesting party was divesting the assets to a company that was capable technically, financially, and in all ramifications able to take on that obligation. Now, that certainly took time, but so did it for everybody else.
Yeah, because I was going to say the PIA also applies to acquisitions by other companies of IOC assets.
Correct,
yeah.
Yes. Now, if we fast forward that process to the point of approval, for us, the regulator took the same amount of time it took to approve the Equinor and Chapal deal, which was announced at the same time the Oando deal was announced. In fact, our consent, the deal's consent request was actually put in before the other deal. So when people speak about, regulatory approval taking shorter or longer, yes, it did take longer than we all expected because it took us in excess of 200 days. But is it in line with the other deals that were on the table? Yes. The NUPRC Commission Chief Executive announced at the Nigerian Oil and Gas Conference that he had approved 2 of the deals. One was going through process. So the deals approved were the Oando and the Chapal Equinor deal, Oando ENI and Chapal Equinor deal. The deal through the process was the Exxon and Seplat deal.
Yeah.
And of course, Shell was behind because they had just put in their consent request. So we can't take for granted the period it takes, but most importantly, the time of making that application.
And you make some valid points, but the news also came out at the time when there was this ongoing dispute. I know that's not within your purview. Nigeria had controversially at the time withdrawn some litigation against Eni and Shell in this OPL 245 dispute. So, of course, people were trying to put 2 and 2 together, but I guess that is on the side of Eni, not Oando. Okay, well, maybe we'll come back to some of the intricacies of that already. But I think what this highlights is that divestment processes are not a walk in the park. And actually, the other divestment that you did, which there's been a lot of confusion around, is a divestment that started way back in 2016.
Yes.
This is divestment when you sold to the Helios Vitol Consortium.
Correct.
And all the back and forth between, does NNPC own OVH, who owns OVH, does Oando still have a stake in OVH? Can you help us understand what exactly has happened there and why you took this kind of phased approach to divesting, which probably caused a lot of people to speculate around what your intentions were?
It's a very good question. I think we do have to go back to set context, right?
Okay.
If we recall, Oando started humble beginnings as a shipping company effectively that supplied fuel oil to the industry. From that, the founders created a sizable downstream company through 2 major acquisitions, Unipetrol acquisition and the Ajib Petroleum, Ajib downstream acquisition. You can see it's not today we started transacting with Ajib. We bought the entire downstream interest back in 2001 and merged those 2 companies to create what was Wando downstream, the petrol stations that you'd seen. That company was grown from number 5 to number 3 and number 3 to number 1 in the country, being the largest downstream interest in the country with over 500 filling stations across Nigeria, the north, the south, the east, and the west. We built a business that was not only sizable, but relevant enough to attract investment from Helios, the London-based capital provision company, and Vitol, the largest trader in the world, as you know. And that transaction culminated in a total divestment, even though it was done in stages. The first was done on the 30th of June, where 60% was partially divested. In 2016, we also gave Vitol and Helios the rights to utilize your Wando name because they realized that the brand equity of that name was quite significant in the country.
Are they still using the Wando name?
No, that deal was terminated because it was for a 10-year period at the time.
10-year period.
It was a 10-year period.
Okay.
But it was terminated a year ago, and all changes to all filling stations will lapse by the end of this month.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Okay.
Now, I want to talk about the share. So that was 60% in 2016. In 2017, 35% was further divested, making 95%, and the balance 5% was divested in 2019. Now, this is all public information because we, as you know, we're listed on several stock exchanges and we have to declare this. And this is information.
So what you're saying is that Oando has no share in OVH as of today, no equity,
we have
and no related parties or entities have any ownership
in OVH at all.
Okay.
And this was since 2019. Now, with regards to the brand licensing agreement that I spoke about, that came to end. We terminated that in 2023, and like I said, we gave them 18 months to unwind all the branding, because it does take time to go through every filling station and take down the Wando logo and the Wando branding. And that expires in September of 2024. Okay. So that's certainly aside. Now that the transaction has taken all the forms and moved on to other things, for us, it's important that our brand stays, protected.
Yeah, I know you mentioned some of the rationale divesting away from Naira revenue-generating businesses, but looking at all the dynamics in the sort of full retailing segment, we're just talking on the top of the show around the issue with petrol. Are you happy you left that business, or is there a chance, given the onset of the Dangote refinery, that you might return to that business someday?
I think it's we saw through the late 90s into the early 2000s, some healthy margins in the downstream. As we progressed towards the later part of the 2000s, 2010, 2011, we started to see a lot of these, the margin disappear. And for us, that was the sign that, we needed to, one, move away from a business where you effectively do all that work for 1% margin, in some cases less. And also, we were very clear that the future of our company needed to stand on a bit more solid ground. And with the issues we saw with the devaluation, etc., we decided that it was important to get out of businesses. In Nigeria, the capital required to build this country and the continent at large typically is in foreign currency. Yeah. And if your risk is in foreign currency, then your method of payback needs to really reflect that as a basic hedging strategy. Now, fast forward to now, are we appreciative? We think it's the best decision we made. We still do supplies offshore to countries in the world, and we still play in the supply space, the trading space, but not in the full retail.
Leave that to NNPC and the market. But let's talk about supply trading space, Oando trading, which is about, maybe I would call it the third controversy. You've cleared up two now. It's really around this news that came that you were doing business with a Maltese entity in the storage and refinery space. I know trading companies globally work in different markets, and sometimes unusual markets. You hear names like Bermuda, like Malta, like New Guernsey. But tell us, what is the dynamic of the trading business, and do you have any interest in a Maltese entity? Why was dust raised around that issue? Has Oando ever done business in Malta?
I mean, look, again, another very good question. I think the penalty for disinformation in most ecosystems is the evil that it does and the way it influences people to perceive a brand or a company, which is damaging for that company.
Help us unpack that, please.
I will. We should have, as a country, placed a higher premium on education. Rolake, look, as a news station yourself, if you just go to the Malta business agency that deals with all the entities that are registered within Malta, when they're registered, and the details of their shareholders, if you search for that company, no search results come up. The first search result of that name is effectively the article that speaks to the fact that someone in the world believes that we have done business in Malta and we have a Maltese entity. But if you just did basic research, very basic research.
And we did, by the way, we didn't find it. But so we wanted you to clarify and actually tell us whether people found it in other sources.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I can tell you extensive due diligence. The company doesn't exist. We have no interest in Malta, because if we did, you will know it is part of our disclosure requirements, the GSC and the NSC. If we have any directors with any interest in Malta, it would also be declared, because again, it's part of the regulations and the rules that we abide by. Now, when it comes to trading, globally we trade out of a significant amount of countries in the world, and we continue to do that without any fear or any hesitation where it makes commercial sense.
Thank you very much. We are talking to Alex Irune, Managing Director of Oando Energy Resources. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, the conversation will continue on indigenous oil and gas companies in Nigeria. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Business Week on Arise News. I'm still joined here in the studio by Dr. Alex Irune, Managing Director of Oando Energy Resources. We've been talking about all sorts, acquisitions, asset acquisitions and whatnot, but I want to talk about Nigeria's oil production. We had the Minister of State saying that your acquisition is positive because it can contribute to Nigeria's ambition. We're currently underperforming seriously as a country in terms of our oil production figures. How do you assess, as a local company, because you face some of these challenges with assets, the government and NNPC's current measures to try and ramp up Nigeria's production? And what else is missing? What can be done?
There's a huge deficit that we experienced in production over the last, say, about 5 years, where we allowed a significant amount of incursions to interrupt our production capacity, creating all sorts of problems in the upstream business. Downhole, surface. They will tell you, if you speak to any, right-thinking geologist, will tell you the subsurface of the continent is interesting, but in Nigeria, very special. If you throw a pole into the ground, you will hit oil, they say in the Niger Delta.
Really?
The question is, the subsurface is simple. It's very clear delineations of oil trapments that can be produced. And this is why all the IOCs were present in Nigeria, or 5 of them. Now, the point is, once you get the oil out of the ground, you've got to get it to sale point. And that was where we really struggled over the last 5 years. Security, security, security. How we dealt with that and how we're dealing with that now has improved things, I must say. Since the presidential directives came out and the NSA spoke to improving the security in the Niger Delta, we've seen an additional circa 200,000 barrels added to our production as a country. So that's a positive step. I think the other things that have been done, certainly the executive orders you've seen to encourage NAG investments and to...
That's non-associated
gas investment, yes. And to also encourage the NCDMB and the local content bodies to look at local content as a value creation and skill transfer, and value transfer as opposed to a cost inflating mechanism, So there are restrictions around that and how that now runs. And the most important for us operators is the contracting timelines, which have been reduced significantly and mandated to be 6 months. But most beyond that is the limits that approvals that are allowed within JV operations have gone up to 10 million. So you can really get your operations going and get things done in a shorter space of time. And when it comes to reserve replacement or production, time is really important.
Of the essence. Time is obviously money. And speaking of some of these efficiencies that are being introduced, how is that impacting your own production outlook? And it would be good to maybe put some figures pre-acquisition of this asset, onshore asset, and post-acquisition. Where does Oando expect to be?
We believe that we can achieve 100,000 barrels of production. In
Where are you currently?
We're currently around the 40,000 barrels of production.
Okay. More than tripling of your
Yes.
current production?
Yes, we believe it's possible, and that was the essence of doing the deal. The essence of doing the deal was to get into the driver's seat, be able to determine our future, run the asset in a brownfield operating way. And I say brownfield because greenfields and brownfields have different operating philosophies. And what we know for a fact is that when you look at brownfields, you must be very sensitive to safety, extremely vigilant on cost, but most importantly, ensure that the production you create is sold. And these are things around security, community, host community relationships. We call them local solutions to local problems.
Yeah.
We believe a lot of those problems have solutions that we're adept at providing. We're spent a significant amount in the sector and have faced these challenges right from the downstream, building our midstream interest into the upstream. So
interestingly, so this asset that you acquired is actually currently producing.
It is.
Yeah, so you're essentially looking to add value and ramp it up.
Yeah.
There was the big NNPCL Afrixim deal, the crude oil backed loan, and Oando Trading extended a huge amount of funding for that loan. And so the assumption is that you will be lifting oil from NNPC, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Do you have an idea of the quantum of barrels you'll be lifting as a company?
So if we go back to the premise of that loan, we remember the central bank needed to shore up its reserves and still needs to, on a daily basis, shore up its reserves with some foreign exchange. So what the NNPC went out into the market to do was to pre-sell its crude, sell its crude forward for about $3.1 billion US. This sale was done to a consortium of traders and financiers who then advanced the dollars and will get paid back on a 90,000 barrel a day contract. And they would lift as the barrels are available in the order of their contribution.
Okay, so Alex, I have to ask you, Nigerians asked a lot of questions around this. People use the words like mortgaging our future oil production. As one of the companies that's lifting this crude oil, and as a Nigerian, are you able to navigate some of the thinking around why people might see this as mortgaging? Do we have a line of sight to so much production capacity that we can afford to structure these sorts of deals? What's your thinking?
Our take is that we do. We do have a line of sight to production increments. I'll tell you for one, the NNPC has embarked on a production drive. At all cost, we must extract as much barrels as we can. And if you follow their trends from January to date, there has been significant improvements, in excess of 30 to 40% improvements in production numbers. So we do have the oil in the ground. The will to get it out in a way that it is, first of all, not pilfered and it gets to sell point is where we struggle a little bit. And what we're seeing is the industry coming together, creating a production war room, effectively, and all of that production that is under the ground needs to come out. And we're clear about that. So not just the Wando, and I just want to talk a little bit about the asset we bought, because I think for you to say it's producing is, we're already 20% stakeholders in the NAOC joint venture at the time. And what we did was we doubled that.
Increased your stake to take it over.
To 40%, right? That particular JV produces not just oil and gas, it is also the JV that supplies Okbai Power Plant, which is a black start generator for the national grid.
So you actually acquired the Okbai assets as well?
Yes, the Okbai assets. There are 2 power plants there. So we supply about 15% to Nigerians for power, 50% of Nigerians' requirements for power. We also produce domestic gas to LMA Petrochemicals and Indorama, and of course the Nigerian Energy, with the largest suppliers of gas to Nigerian Energy. So when you look at the extent of the responsibility, not only is it large, but we must make it work.
Okay. Oh, very interesting. So that asset, you now own 40%. What is the total production from that asset?
The total production from asset is about 40,000 barrels at the moment.
40,000
and that we believe we can take in excess of 100,000 barrels.
Okay, cool. So you're around 16,000 barrels a day, thereabouts. Okay, so let's look at local energy companies as a whole. You know, in recent years, local energy companies have been pivoting in their models. You talked about divesting away from Naira revenue-generating businesses, living the downstream, and it's a kind of Pan-African phenomenon. You're actually now president of Wando Clean Energy, which I also thought was really interesting. What really is the strategy? Because in one sense, you're pivoting more into the upstream, right? By getting away from floor retailing and some of these other. But in another sense, you're also trying to play in the energy transition. So how are you navigating those dynamics, right? Because in the broader global context, those two things are almost at odds with one another. You're increasing oil production, in a sense, increasing your carbon footprint on the one hand, but you're also supporting energy transition models.
Yes. It's a very good question, but we think it's the only way to go.
Okay.
We think a just transition is one that sees us transition the continent not into poverty, but into a developed ecosystem that creates a thriving Africa. We spoke about oil, and I spoke about 40,000 barrels of production. We produce about 500,000 standard cubic feet of gas as well.
Okay, you're soldiering gas, of course.
Yes,
we shouldn't forget that.
And when you look at that basket, you're saying, we need the oil for today's requirements. The world is still heavily reliant on oil. We've seen for the first time global demand cross 100 million barrels, in 2020, only last year, 2023. It's imperative that we continue to develop our economies and ensure that our governments have balanced budgets. And that only comes from selling what you have, which is the oil. Now, when we look at the gas has already been dubbed a transition fuel. And the interesting thing is that gas itself is going to be the lever for economic advancement, economic development, but most importantly, catapulting Africa and Nigeria to the next phase of its growth, right? On the back of that sits the renewable ambition. Now, we must do renewables. We must do renewables for two simple reasons. One, it will be dire if the world goes ahead of us in that space. So we must understand the technology, we must entrench the technology, we must develop, and we must not be procurers of renewable solutions in the future. Yeah. So we must start.
We must actually be creating and manufacturing locally ourselves.
We do have a monopoly on renewable energy. If you look at the sun, the central hemisphere pretty much was smack bang in the equator, right? So if you look at it from that standpoint, we've got sunlight, we've got geothermal, we've got everything, right? So we must be able to harness that. Right?
Yeah. In fact, Oando, you kind of piloted this electric buses, which is, pretty ambitious in a state like Lagos, given the congestion of traffic. How did that pilot go? We don't seem to have heard anything about it. We heard about this partnership with Lamata.
Yes.
So what was the outcome of that? And is this something you're going to roll out, or are you going back to kind of ideate a bit more around it?
Again, the foundations of the company are built on doing, rigorous work before we present anything to the public. Those buses have been in operation for over a year.
Okay.
They've done over 140,000 kilometers each with no downtime.
How many of those buses?
We've got 2 buses that are running different routes.
Electric buses?
Yeah, electric buses.
Okay.
And they're running different routes in Lagos. We've seen those buses address 3 key things. The first challenge is ride anxiety. People believing that when you get on an electric bus, it's going to stop. Because, of course, there's no electricity or there's limited electricity in the country, therefore electric buses make no sense. But it's actually the other way around, because these buses are built with such interesting technology that are able to regenerate power as they move. So not only is the electric being dissipated for use for movement, it's utilized to charge the batteries. The second was resilience. Right? Yeah, you bring these new kits, let's call it that, into the country, and you're worried that the roads will damage them. But these buses have never been off the roads. They have run every single day for the last year. Now, when you look at the final thing, which is the whole essence of renewable energy, zero tailpipe emissions, we've displaced the same amount of CO2 you would displace if you planted over 2,700 trees. Just by having 2 buses? Just by having 2 buses.
What is the capacity of these buses? These are commuter buses?
These are large commuter buses, about 100 passenger buses.
Yeah.
They're your BRT buses, the really big ones, yes,
Yeah.
at 10 meters, 10.5 meter buses. So they're very, not only very resilient, but certainly the way to go.
Indeed, indeed. Kudos to Wando on that. Electric buses may just be the future.
And I tell you, we are committed to rolling out the next phase of that, where we've ordered another 100 buses to continue the next phase of that pilot, taking it up to 2,000 buses for Lagos and 12,000 across the country.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the environmental impact, the positive environmental impact on that. So very sound strategy. I want to ask you about Dangote Refinery. We have, and maybe ask you about your recent joining of the Swoot Club. Stocks worth over 100 trillion naira. But Dangote Refinery, this idea that NNPC is the sole offtake of crude, is Oando trading, prospecting the Dangote Refinery? And what's your take on local traders being able to offtake from this refinery? Because Nigerians have owned this refinery. It's our own, pretty much.
I kudos to Alhaji Aliko for such a monumental feat. I think in an environment like this, we've broken the jinx.
The 28-year jinx.
28-year jinx.
Yeah.
I think, and to have the largest single train refinery in the world is by no means a small, endeavor. It's huge. So I think we all must be proud.
Yeah.
Raki, I want to say something really quickly. We find that in Nigeria, we must develop the construct of praise for people that do well.
Okay.
Instead of vilifying them. And I think this is something that the Jews do very well. This is something that the Western people do very well. And I think on the continent, we must start to embrace, our heroes, so to speak. The Dangote refinery will certainly benefit Nigeria. There's nothing better than producing your crude in your backyard and refining it in your backyard. There's nothing better than that. It will provide a supply long position for Africa. We would be able to supply the entire Africa from the shores of our country. And traders, I'm sure, would enjoy delivering and off-taking from Dangote refinery. We will certainly do business with anyone that is willing to do business with us. On the trading side, we have no aspirations to internally distribute petroleum products.
So you're all trading overseas?
We would, yes, we would. We're offshore trading. We believe that the future of mobility in the downstream is probably electric. So if you ever see us in the downstream, it will be dispensing electric.
So essentially what you're saying, you're already ahead of the pack. You're already ahead of the game.
We are.
Yeah. And speaking of being ahead of the game, recently Oando's share price soared. I think the acquisition announcement obviously did help that. But you're now in the 1 trillion market capitalization club, if you like. How does that make you feel as a business leader in the oil and gas space? And what is the future ambition strategy for the company? You know, what is the limit here? And you've got 1 minute, Alex.
We don't do what we do for those accolades. We do what we do because we believe that Nigeria needs to advance, take giant steps forward. And everything we have done in the history of the company demonstrates that. We've always been the first. We've built the first, the largest downstream company. The first gas distribution company is built over 200 kilometers in the country. The first midstream jetty in the country and on the continent. And the first indigenous company that has acquired 2 IOCs in its lifetime. We don't do this for accolades. We do this for shareholder return, value creation for the Nigerian people, and to show the world that Africans and Nigerians are truly amazing contributions to the world. I want to speak about feeling. Makes us feel good, but we believe this is just the beginning. Now the work starts. We've got this asset. We've got to get it to 100,000 barrels of oil. We've got to get it to 1.5 BCF of gas. And my team are focused, ready to deliver on that. Thank you.
Fantastic. I really do hope you make that 100,000 barrels of oil per day. And I hope other local players also rise up to the task. We're seeing that the local market is really formidable, hitting almost 50% of Nigeria's production, hopefully one day. Thank you so much for joining us. We've been talking to Dr. Alex Irune. Thank you for coming on Business Week, the Managing Director of Oando Energy Resources and Executive Director at Oando PLC. And let's not forget President and CEO of Oando Clean Energy, because renewable energy is the future. Thank you for joining us on the show. Well, that's all we have time for on Business Week. I'm Rolake Akinkugbe-Filani. Let's continue this very topical conversation online. You can find me on X. Do have a lovely rest of the weekend. See you soon.